Chapter 2 Moonlight and Memories. The harsh fluorescent lighting was starting to strain Stan Polar's eyes, and the incessant beeping of the scanner became increasingly annoying. Finally, the machine ceased, and Stan was given the all clear sign he had seen already 3 times before. Special Agent Dutch Jameson's voice came over the intercom, and Stan grimaced with frustration.
Thank you, Mr. Polar. You may join the rest of your group.
Stan sighed and walked to the back of the room, reconvening with Lewis, Sarah, and David.
First we get interrogated, and now we get examined.
The young chemist shook his head.
I don't understand what they want from us. It took us an hour each to be scanned by that ridiculous machine, and it seems to say we're all fine. So why are we still quarantined over here?
I don't think the quarantine and the examination are mutually exclusive. If they were worried about us being a contagious kind of sick, Jameson wouldn't have interacted with us without a barrier. Nobody would have.
And the thing Sarah's parents gave us.
David stopped short, letting his head fall slightly.
Sorry, Sarah.
A gentle hand squeezed David's shoulder, and he looked up as Sarah replied.
Don't worry about it, David. It's a new situation for all of us. And you're right, the bottles my mom and dad told us to take appear to have done the job. But there's still so many unanswered questions, like why they were there and what that gas even was.
Based on our treatment here, I'd say it's obvious what it was.
Well, I guess you are used to being right, Mr. Polar, Jameson smirked as he stepped through the now open door. But not this time. As the agent continued his entry, he was followed by Isabel and Mark, with 2 more people behind.
Mr. and Mrs. Salire.
Stan waved, forcing a smile. Clark and Lucy Salire grunted in surprise as Lewis and David tackled each of them with a hug. What are you doing here? They didn't even let us make our phone call. This is going to take a minute, buddy, Clark said, but it's going to be all right. He turned to Jameson with a glare. You should have called us the minute you knew they were ours. Lucy and I will be talking to Fob about this, Jameson. If that is your immediate reaction, then everything I know about you two is wrong. I know exactly where 80% of us stand on Director Fob, Agents Salire.
Agents?
David whipped his head around to Lewis.
What are they talking about?
Lewis shook his head, trying to piece together this new bit of information.
No way. How would none of us have seen this? What, I guess you're all in the CIA? Sarah's parents, too?
Clark nodded solemnly. Yeah, I mean, why do you think our families are so close?
Well,
Lucy interjected.
Stan's family isn't in the government part of the circle, but you get the idea.
But we came as soon as Mark and Isabel texted us, and we're glad to see you guys are all right.
And so sorry you were involved. It shouldn't have been your problem. None of it should have been.
But what is going on?
David asked.
We tried to tell these guys what happened, but we keep getting interrupted.
Why don't you start, David?
Isabel suggested.
We'll fill in the blanks when you guys are finished.
Lewis stole a glance at Sarah and opened his mouth, but shut it quickly. Going to take a little bit of getting used to this thinking part. Hey, lady.
Hi, hero.
You know, you don't have to be here for this part. No one expects you to relive this moment right now.
That's sweet.
Sarah smiled slightly, coming up beside Lewis, her hand brushing against his.
But part of grieving is talking about it. And Mom and Dad definitely helped a little. I did get to say goodbye after all. Not a large consolation to me, but I'm sure it's way better than if things were left unsaid.
Lewis nodded, doing his best not to stare at Sarah, instead trying to focus on David beginning his explanation. We interrupt Voltage the audio drama to bring you our sponsor, Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you too, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Overcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership because Anchor is the first sponsor they sign you up with. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. You can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now back to Voltage.
We were all at Stan's house. You know, that housewarming thing we told you about. And Lewis was reading his latest entry in the podcast he's working on.
The Reckoning Chronicles.
Yeah,
David grinned.
it's going to be awesome when he actually starts posting it instead of letting it take up memory on his computer. So we were sitting outside and this blue smoke starts coming from the Spire factory. Stan's cell phone rang.
It was my boss. He told me that only Gene Tomber was still clocked in for the day, and since he works across from me, it was my job to check on what was going on. So we went over there together.
Why would the rest of you go? It was Mr. Polar's responsibility, and smoke of any color would be potentially dangerous, especially from a factory.
Dude, do you not have friends? Because that sounds like something a loner would say.
We've all been friends for years, Lewis agreed. If Stan goes, we go. Simple as that.
In any case, when we got there, we found Gene Tomber on the floor in a pool of blood. And then we ran into...
Your parents. We have, more or less, the rest of the footage from their contact lenses. All field agents have them. When they're on mission.
And probably off mission.
When they're on mission, the contacts stream a video feed to the CIA's database. We know that before you entered, Agents Sally and Martin Cloud were trying to get Tomber to turn over the information on what we've called the Peak Project. In layman's terms, it's a super soldier initiative. Spire was contracted with the government to make a chemical agent to grant our soldiers peak physical performance. Olympic-level strength, speed, dexterity, and an eidetic memory. After a year's worth of work, Gene Tomber had perfected the enzymes that allowed this to be possible. Just not without side effects.
A year? That quick?
Contrary to popular belief, the government doesn't pay for procrastination, Mr. Nico. The side effects were incredibly unfortunate, so we were tasking Spire with fixing it. They beat around the bush for some time, and the Clouds were sent to see what the holdup was. Once they confronted Tomber, he was uncooperative and attacked the agents. He was shot in self-defense and released the unfinished Peak Project with his last breath. Unbeknownst to us, he had synthesized an antidote. The antidote you managed to find in his lab while looking around, Mr. Solire. So while the Clouds gave their lives when they told you to take the antidote, all of you saved the town when you diverted the flow of the gas, bringing the rest into the factory instead of out in the air. The amount that had escaped was not enough to do any damage to the atmosphere, but the large quantities you inhaled would have killed you had you not taken the counteragent. Silence hung in the air as the gravity of the situation dawned on the four young adults.
So, we're alive, but only because we're basically living weapons. Guess that's what that machine was doing, checking what we did and didn't test positive for.
Is that why we're here? Because we're going to be, weaponized?
No, Mark answered quickly. We have made sure you won't be required for service. You've pretty much earned your freedom by stopping the attack, and you were only here for observation, and because the agency needed the full story.
So what are we supposed to do now?
You go back to your old lives and are free to go home, for now. If we have any other questions, we'll contact you, but I think it's safe to say we have the full story.
The full story for you, maybe.
Stan scoffed, rising from the chair and starting towards the door. Lewis began his exit as well, but offered a hand to the interrogator. Thank you for telling us, Agent Jameson, and for believing us. You're welcome, Mr. Solire. And I know we didn't say it before, but thank you to all of you. Lewis is fine, Agent Jameson. As the four friends left, with the parental agents closely behind, a pair of eyes watched from behind one-way glass, and a teal-polished nail clicked the save button on the files of the Spire incident. We hope you enjoyed this exciting episode of Voltage, the audio drama. Tune in every 2 weeks for the next chapter.